Welcome to Sports in the 607, where we talk games people play. Here's your host, Bob Michaels.
Hello, everybody. Bob Michaels. Welcome to Sports in the 607. And if you aren't acquainted with what we're doing here, it's a nostalgic trick. Easy for me to say, nostalgic trip down memory lane. And I'm very fortunate today to welcome a gentleman that I met, I believe, and he'll correct me if I'm wrong, I hope. Back in 1973, we were participating, Bill as a teacher and me supposedly as a spectator or a celebrity basketball player at one of the local high schools in Corning. And from that time on, we have moved ahead, whether with Bill being a coach, with the two of us playing in pickup summer softball leagues, and just kind of having a great relationship that has continued to build 40-some years, Bill. Hard to believe, huh?
Well, we're working on 50 right now, Bob.
Oh, my gosh. That ages me very quickly here today.
Yeah.
Well, what I'd like to do, Bill, and from time to time, folks, I'll refer to him as Hoppy because that's what I've known him through the years. But I would say this right off the top of the interview. You're probably one of the few in the region, in the 607 area, who has probably one of the more colorful wardrobes with all the coaching colors and places that you've visited. And with that being said, your coaching career actually began at Corning Painted Post West High School. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Tell us a little bit about those days back in the early 70s. You were also a classroom teacher. What subject?
Math. High school math.
Well, that would seem to make sense, with the X's and O's they talk about in football and in basketball and other sports as well. But was it an ambition of yours to get into education and possibly into coaching?
That was the sole purpose. I searched as time went on after my high school graduation for something to do. What could I be good at? And math was always somewhat easy for me. So that, along with an interest in becoming a coach, all the sights pointed towards becoming a teacher. So in 1974, I became a math teacher. Actually, on Labor Day, Gus Rossi interviewed me, and it was actually Labor Day weekend. And so I was interviewed on a Saturday, came back, and said I accepted the job to my parents and my then girlfriend, now wife. And I started teaching on Tuesday after Labor Day. Actually, there was staff meetings, and we saw the kids on Wednesday. So it was Wednesday, September 6th or 7th of 1974 when I started my teaching career. And that first year, I was a freshman basketball coach. I actually had desires to become a baseball coach, but that never really came to fruition until later on in my coaching career. So I started out as the freshman coach, then graduated after 2 or 3 years to the JV job. And then in 1983, Chuck Brady took a chance on me because I was a relatively unknown person in the southern tier in their immediate area. And Chuck Brady, I interviewed with him because my wife had seen an advertisement for a head coaching position at Thomas A. Edison. So Chuck interviewed me. I was, wide-eyed and, very green as anyone would be the first time. And Chuck interviewed me and said, "You got the job." Just like that. It was that simple. And I'm thinking, it was kind of, odd. I didn't know how interviews worked, other than, maybe what happened when I, interviewed with Gus Rossi. Everything was kind of spontaneous, and everything happened all at once. So Chuck gave me that break.
I want to interrupt you for a moment and
Sure.
ask you, where did you call home? Where did you attend high school, and what sports did you play in high school?
I attended Draper High School in Schenectady, New York, and I played baseball there for 4 years, and basketball for 3, and I think that was it. So
So that's where the spark ignited for you. You get into coaching and everything, and you talk about Chuck Brady, who recently was honored with a memorial plaque at Addison High School, and I had the opportunity to interact with him as well. So after Addison High School, you trade in the blue and orange for what colors?
I I made a contact to Kevin Moore, who was the head men's basketball coach. And at the time, that was 1990, Kevin was very young, full of energy, but he had maybe just one system that he played under Ed Wilson at Mansfield University. And he was looking for some fresh ideas. So he asked me to become his assistant at Elmira College. So I was there from 1990 until 1997, and we had probably as much fun as I've ever had as a coach. You were treated like royalty because you were a college coach. People, the opposing teams, opposing coaches were always, it was great, to interact with them, and there was a lot, to learn, but I'd like to think that I brought, some knowledge to Kevin and his staff, and we had some really great years. It was a lot of fun.
So from blue and orange to purple and gold, and taking those trips, throughout the Southern Tier. Bill, before we move any further, I want to mention to the fans that this part of 607 Sports in the 607 is being brought to you by First Heritage Federal Credit Union, with multiple locations throughout the 607 listening area. So for those of you just joining us, Bill Hopkins is our guest today, and we're getting nostalgic. I had mentioned that we met in 73, but I believe it was probably more like 74, 75 during basketball season. So we moved forward, and there were opportunities that were afforded you after Elmira College. Where did your journey take you in terms of being a coach?
Well, I do want to mention that there was a time when I did coach the varsity squad at West High School, and that was in the late 70s, like 79 and 80. And I think that's where the white coat, you talk about the wardrobes, made its first appearance.
Well, I was hoping that you would bring that up because we have a mutual friend, and Dennis Sweeney, who worked with me for a few years when we were in radio in Corning. And do you want to set up the scenario about the white sport jacket? And I'm going to embellish on it. You know I will.
Yeah. Well, I think it was maybe my desire to to be something different, rather than the dark jackets and the dark ties and stuff. So, but it was a tradition back then for all the coaches, to wear a suit coat or a sport coat and tie, and so I thought that it would be unique to have a white coat, and I don't like these days to stand out. I like to be on the sidelines.
Right.
But back then in the late 70s, the white coat came out, and it was quite a spectacle, as I'm sure you're about to embellish.
Well, Dennis and I had teamed up to call radio games, and we happened to, I think we both had the thought at the same time. I nudged him, he nudged me, and we pointed down to you on the bench, and as you said, most coaches would wear non-standout apparel as far as sport jackets are concerned, but here's Bill Hopkins walking out on the court And I think everybody, I don't know if they were aghast, but everybody seemed to notice it at the same time you had that white sport jacket on. And it wasn't that one-time occasion. I think there were several times, and you indicated to both Dennis and I later on the reason that you wore it multiple times is because it produced victories for you. So coaches aren't superstitious, Hoppy? You were.
Yeah, we are. We are. If and it's like with any other outfit. If it produces wins, I'm wearing the same outfit. I'm not changing.
I hope you
back
changed
then,
your socks, though, Coach.
I change. Yeah, there's other things I change too, but I'm wearing the same basic appearance. With the sport coat and such, and it was kind of a lucky sport coat that produce wins, so you stay with the lucky formula. So
I'm wondering, Bill, I think you probably were the first coach that I ever asked, but I would inquire from time to time on the very stops that you would make at various schools. Did you ever keep a notepad on the nightstand so that if you woke up in the middle of the night and might have thought about a scheme or a plan that would work, a play that might produce some positive results? Did you jot that down, or was that just a figment of my imagination?
no, that's exactly right.
All right.
Things would come to me. Most of the time, it was defensively. To this day, I still enjoy the chess match that I have with the opposing coach, and we can talk about my connection with Corning, uh, you know, later on. But I relish, I really do. I relish the chess match. You have better players than us, so we're going to try to find a way to take away your strengths and make it difficult for your players to try to score on us. So we would develop schemes to try to whether it be through a scout report or through film watch or all of the above to try to put a stop and take away some of the things you people do well. And I'm sure they would try to counter what we do well, but there was many nights that I would stay up and think about what schemes can I use? What can I do to counteract what this team is doing or what this player is doing? And I would rise up and write things down. So you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what I did. And to this day, it's the same thing. It hasn't changed.
Do you keep those plays that have produced results? And obviously, personnel change, so you've got to adapt those plays to the players that you are coaching and everything like that. But you keep it in a binder that you might be able to reach back on and say, hey, listen, this worked a long time ago. I've got a bunch that maybe they could facilitate this.
Well, Bob, to be honest with you, I got practice plans from 1983. So to answer your question, yes. I mean, there's things that have always worked. Sometimes you have to teach your players, and sometimes it doesn't fit the players. So it's not about putting a square peg into a round hole. It's about what the players have to offer, and then how can we utilize those skills to allow them to be successful. And hopefully the success is putting the ball in the basket. But as a coach, you're at the mercy of the player because they're the ones that have to score. All you can do is to put them in position to try to score, and that's the chess match. There's no substitute for it in my head, and I'm 73 years old, and not afraid to admit it. But I'm to this day, I think about things that can fit the personnel that we possess and try to make it work.
Oh, hold the thought on that because I want to talk about some rivalries that you've experienced through the years. Before we go any further, I want to remind you that this game is being brought to you by On a Roll. Did I say this game? This is interview. I've got to separate the play-by-play from the talking, all that. But On a Roll in Hanover Square, Horseheads. Well, the one face I'm sure that many of you recognize on your screen is that of Bill Hopkins, who's been, I don't want to say a journeyman, but certainly an expert coach in many different locations throughout the 607 listening area, and hence the name of our interview platform, Sports in the 607. Bill, you talked about debuting at Corning Painted Post West High School. And anyone who grew up in this area, anyone who has been a sport fan, knows the rivalry that evolved out of Corning Free Academy, Northside High School, and Painted Post High School, and that evolved in, I believe, 1963 was the first year that Corning East and Corning West came online. As you arrive and become a coach in basketball, I would imagine there's probably a lot of great tales that you could tell about the rivalry. Would you maybe talk a little bit about that right now?
Well, there is no substitute for a rivalry. It is the best times when you find out as a coach and certainly as a team how good you really are. And many times, I guess, as they say, they throw out the records. And it's very, very true because there have been upsets through the years when the lesser team on paper, there's no way they could possibly beat, the better team, and they do. And they just find a way magically to make it happen. And that's probably the best way to describe it. It's magic. Rivalries are magic. They are fun to watch. The fan participation is intense. And I remember some physically intense moments back then, back in the 70s and 80s, and there's just no substitute for it. There really isn't. The place is packed. Kids get a chance to play in front of a full house and really get a feel for what the crowd can do for you as a player and for you as a team with momentum and such. So it's so much fun. It really is.
So you move on from Corning Painted Post West High School. Your next stop took you where?
Elmira College. That was from 90. Oh, I'm sorry. To Thomas A. Edison, and we were there until 1990, from 83 until 90, and then we went on to Elmira College from 1990 until 97. So, and Thomas Edison seemed like everybody was a rival with Edison. We were always the smallest school, and we just had a bunch of really tough kids. They were awesome. They'd run through a wall for you. It was so much fun, to be able to coach those kids. And it took us a long time, 7 years, to build a program. And the year I left, the next year, they won Class D sectionals and went on to regionals and lost by 3, I think,
wow,
for the right to go to the Final Four. So what we were doing was the right blueprint. That's certainly a credit to the kids. I'm not patting anybody on the back, certainly not myself, but the energy we poured into a program to connect to the players, starting in grade 4, way back when, in 1983, that group of kids came through, and when they were juniors and seniors, that's the group that won in the Class D sectional. So we had the blueprint, and we just had to, continue to follow through with it. That gave me a lot of confidence, even though I wasn't able to coach that team. That gave me a lot of confidence in what we were doing was right. It was the right way to go.
Did you think at the time that basketball would be the platform that would give you your most success? And obviously, you said you thought that there might be an opportunity to coach baseball, and that did happen. But basketball, I mean, that's how I've always known you.
Yeah.
I would imagine that it's probably provided the most satisfaction for you in terms of being a coach.
Absolutely. And we had moments with baseball. They were less number of them because we weren't given many opportunities to coach. But those the times with the basketball team. Yeah, I told this story. I was fortunate enough to be inducted into the Corning Painting Post Hall of Fame, and I played 4 years of baseball. I played 7 years of semi-professional baseball, and my junior year in college, I fell in love with watching a mentor of mine, so to speak, and Dr. Richard Sowers. He made I made this statement in my speech, acceptance speech, induction speech. He made a baseball player fall in love with coaching basketball. So I was a baseball player, and that's what I was really good at. I was never great at basketball. I thought I was, but I guess I wasn't. But in baseball, I had some measure of success, and I really thought that that was going to be the way I was going to go when I was started coaching. Well, the opportunities never presented themselves, but back in 1974, coaching freshman basketball, I said I'll give this a shot, and so naturally I'm going to be like Dr. Richard Sowers, and it was a lot of fun. Doc Sowers was always someone who was prepared. He was always someone who was disciplined. His players paid attention to details and many times overcame obstacles that the opposing team had in terms of talent and beat them. So they overachieved, and that was something that I really admired. I love his intensity, and I kind of stepped back and said, that's really me. That's what I aspire to be, and that's what I became. I'd like to think so anyway. Over the course of time, that we maybe not had the best talent, but I would never be outworked, and our players would always be prepared. And it didn't matter where I coached. Our players were going to understand exactly how we were going to attack the opposition, and they knew exactly how the opposition was going to attack them. And there was no surprises or anything like that. We were ready. And it resulted in wins. It certainly resulted in some losses for sure, but it wasn't because of lack of effort on my players' part.
Bill Hopkins is our guest on Sports in the 607. We'll return to talk a little bit more about his journey and our so-called association as far as teammates are concerned. That was a lot of fun. Sports in the 607 is presented in part by Empire Sports of the Southern Tier. So we're back talking with Bill Hopkins. I mentioned Hoppy and I teammates. Well, kind of. We both played softball in summer league. There's a local restaurant in Riverside that provided a team, and we had an opportunity, and some people would call it beer leagues, but it was just a fun league we played there. And when I was a sports director at WCLI Radio in Corning, we put a team together, thanks, and I'm dropping names today, thanks to a friend of mine, Dave Taylor Smith, who was a diehard Yankee fan like I am, and he gave us the name the Yankee Doodlers, and it was WCLI and KZ 106. And basically what we did, we put a group of people together to play other folks that had an interest in softball for the benefit of charity. And I think it was probably a charitable thing that brought Bill Hopkins and myself and a few others together. But we had a lot of fun there, Hoppy. And I'm reminded of a young lady who was a student of yours, and I believe her name was Mary Kay Russell. And she could never grasp the opportunity of calling you Bill because you were always Mr. Hopkins as a teacher, and she was very uncomfortable with that as assessment, but ran into her a few years down the road afterward, and I said, how do you feel like that? She says, to this day, if I ever ran into him again, I'd call him Mr. Hopkins. So I think that's probably out of respect, Hoppy, but once again, we had a chance to have some fun together, and I thank you for being a part of that memory for me. So I want to probe a little bit more about the the travels of Bill Hopkins. And as I alluded at the top of the broadcast, a guy who has, I don't know if you have all the colors from all those places that you stopped off in those early days, but later on, I had an opportunity to coach at Corning High School, mentoring the boys basketball team. Talk about that journey.
Well, if you're speaking of the time I spent at East High School, that was
Yes.
2000. Okay, that was 2000. Well, let me go back a couple of years. I was fortunate enough to be asked to join Pudge Brightwise's staff at Corning West, and that was in 1998, I believe, 97 and 98. And I was, with all the experience that I had in meeting people and in talking X's and O's at the college game prior to that, when I was at Elmira College, a lot of what we brought, I at least offered it, to Pudge as a something I think that might help out our high school guys to be able to be more successful. Well, I'm not here to claim that what we did was and everything bit of it worked, but we were able to change some things and be able to interject a defensive system that we still use today. And I came up with some plays, set plays that fit our personnel at the time at West High School, and lo and behold, we were 1998. We win sectionals. I think we played Waverly. I think at Horseheads, and the game went like double overtime. And it just kept going back and forth, and then we played. Oh boy. A team downstate at EFA. I don't know if you recall that game. It wasn't Mount Vernon, but it was some big section one.
Yeah.
And they were Peekskill. Maybe I might have been Peekskill.
Okay.
So anyway, we're playing them, and we're everybody's expecting us to get whacked. I mean, we're just going to take it on the chin and go home and say thank you. Well, we beat them, and it was a big celebration at the end of the game and such. I still remember that. Pudge jumped up in the air, and I tried to grab him. And I forgot to carry him, so we both fell down to the ground. And
I remember that, Bill. Yeah.
Picture of the Star Gazette where Pudge is got his hands up like this, and I'm laughing, and I have my clipboard in my hand, and so that was a fun moment. So we're off to the Final Four, in Class B. Holy smokes! And we get to go to Glens Falls, and what an experience that was for our players. And unfortunately, it was probably a bit overwhelming for our guys that we played West Hill. And they had some really, really good players, and I thought we did too. But our guys just didn't play very well, and probably just kind of happy to be there. And so we got waxed pretty good in that game. But just to be able to make it to the Final Four, with our defensive system and a few set plays that Pudge was agreeable to operate, that we made it that far. It was like wow. So again, in my head, what we are teaching our players has been confirmed because it works. It's not, I'm not a mad scientist. I think we look to try to, find things that fit, find things that work, with terminology and positioning on the defensive end. And it worked. And we were able to stop reasonably well a Peekskill team they were really athletic.
Sports in the 607 is brought to you by Solutions Federal Credit Union.
And we are chatting with the longtime coach in the region, Bill Hopkins. Well, I'd be remiss. You mentioned about your coaching days with Pudge Brightwise at Corning West. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring out the fact that you also coached at Corning East, and you had a very successful run at Elmira Notre Dame before returning to assist Mike Johnston most recently with the with the Hawks program, but just talk a little bit about your experience and what you came away with building that program at ND.
It was so rewarding. I mean, I'm going to go backwards a little bit if I could. Again, being asked to coach Corning East High School, everybody knows that as a lacrosse school, it's very difficult to get kids to commit, to playing basketball because there's so much time that has been devoted, to lacrosse. So it took us again 7 years, 7 years before we started seeing results, and we lost back-to-back finals, sectional finals in 2005 and 2006, and we had some really good players. We had some, lacrosse players, but we had some basketball players too at the time. And it took some time to develop those kids, and to teach them what we're trying to accomplish, at Corning East. So we had success. It was a lot of fun. And then from there, I got a call from Steve Weber, who was the athletic director at Elmira Notre Dame. And he asked me if I wanted to interview, for the Notre Dame job. And I understood that the previous year they were 2-15, which is not Notre Dame like, and very, very unusual. So we interviewed, and I sat in with Mike DeLuizio, bless his heart, bless his soul, Steve Weber, and I think maybe one other administrator, and they hired me on the spot. That first year, we were 12-7 with a lot of kids up from JVs. So we kind of turned things around. And over the course of 10 years, we never had a losing season. We won 159 games. We lost 53, which is roughly an average of, winning percentage of, 75%. Yeah. We won 2 sectional titles, lost 2 other finals. And if it wasn't for a knee injury to a boy named Tom Hagen, we probably would have won 3 sectional titles in a row. Mm. Without him, he's a big part of our offense and defense with his size and strength and scoring ability. He tore his ACL and he wasn't able to play his junior year, but it was his sophomore year and senior year we won sectionals, so it could have been 3 in a row. And then from there we moved on. I'm trying to think of the years. It was 2018, yeah. And there was a couple of years where I helped out locally at Bradford, Dundee, with the 2 young coaches that were there. And I won't speak too much about the coaching mechanism that they tried to implement. It was just kind of very strange to me. But I was hired to be like a program assistant, using my knowledge and experience, to try to mentor these young coaches and such. And then a year ago, Mike Johnston had just came off a football season where they went to the Final Four, and the season was over with. And I said, I texted him and I said, "Congratulations on a great year." And he texted, after we got talking back and forth, he texted me and he said, "Do you miss it?" And I kind of knew what he was hinting at. And I said, well, what I miss is the chess match that I mentioned earlier. What I miss is the teaching, the practices, and seeing kids be successful with what we're teaching. And then I miss the interaction with the players. All the other stuff, you can have it. And he said, well, if you get the itch, let me know. So that was after football season last year. So 3 days later, I contacted him. I said, I'd like to, to help out as much as I can. And so we went through the process of, being a volunteer coach, and there's paperwork and classes and, all this stuff. And okay, fine, whatever it takes. So this past season, we were 18-3. We won sectionals. We went to regionals. I think we were playing, the name of the school always escapes me. I cannot remember the name. But anyway, we were ahead at halftime with a chance to go to the Final Four in Class AAA, and we ended up losing by 8 or 10. And it was so much fun because we know that a lot of the players that we had last year are coming back this year. So it should be a lot of fun.
So the question is, will Bill Hopkins be back to scratch that itch?
Yeah, I'm gonna shoot for my 51st year of coaching here.
Look at that.
In this area. Yeah, so it's Mike and I. We've spent time as rivals. We've spent time. I actually, this is early mid '80s, I believe. I used to coach at Golden Valley basketball camp, and I knew John Beeline, who was the head coach at Lemoyne, and still know John. He and I have been friends for 40 years. So Mike was going to go there to Lemoyne, as I believe, as a walk-on. And I knew what John was going to teach, all the players from day one. And in terms of shooting, in terms of footwork and such. So I offered that information to Mike. This is 40 years ago now. So we've been bitter rivals. I've coached him to a small degree. I started coaching against his father, and now we're putting the band back together, and we're going to have some more fun and see if we can build on last year's squad. So to answer your question, yeah, I'll be back. Yeah.
And before we conclude this interview, I want to give you an opportunity to talk about something that you do on a regular basis. You have a summertime basketball program that you call Shoot the Lights Out. What's the premise of all that, and are you continuing with that?
Yeah, we actually started it back in the year 2000. The summer of 2000, we started this little business of mine where we teach people how to shoot the basketball correctly. And as time went on, we had camps at East High School. I had camps at Owego, Horseheads, Union Endicott, Bath, and now at Avoca for the last 19 years. So we've been all over the Southern Tier, Section 5, out west, and then many schools in Section 4 where I've conducted clinics teaching people how to shoot the basketball correctly. So our camps are strictly offense. We do nothing with defense. Defense is taught. We feel like we could teach defense, but basketball is a skill game of offense. You got to be able to put the ball in the basket if you expect to win. And we teach people how to do it and have been doing it now for 25 years. So I'm very proud of that. And we have encountered, I'll give you a quick little story. Avoca won back-to-back state championships just a short time ago, maybe 2-3 years ago. Every member of their starting lineup attended our camp at Avoca. That's not the sole reason, of course, because Brian Putnam did a great job with the players. But I'd like to think that we had a piece of us, in those kids, teaching them how to shoot the basketball correctly. Because I remember many of the players were like in 5th and 6th grade when they started coming to our camps, and then by the time they were seniors, they won state championships. So,
well, Hoppy, you have been a credit to all these players throughout the time that you've been coaching in the 607. I've certainly enjoyed the interaction that we've had as a broadcaster, you as a coach, and you and I, most importantly to me, as a friend. I thank you for taking the time and giving us an opportunity to see a slice of your life. I wish you success, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in basketball season 25-26.
Yeah, you don't know, but God willing, I'll be there. So 51 years is a long time, but there's not too much that teams can throw at us that I haven't seen or Mike has seen, Mike Johnston. So I think the kids are I think they're in pretty good hands, to try to get the most out of them, so that we can get as many wins as possible. And who knows what titles will lead, where we will go with it. But we have some really good players, and it's been a lot of fun. And I thank you for your efforts through the years to promote high school sports in this area. You've been a big part of, no matter where I've been, whether I wear a white coat or a green coat or an orange coat or a maroon sweater or what, a sweater vest or a blue and gold, down in Notre Dame. You've always been there, so I thank you for all your time too.
You're very kind, and I thank you for your time, Bill Hopkins. And a little inspiration out there. I want to say our thanks to Tebow for inspiring us to move along here on the Sports in the 607. I'm Bob Michaels. We'll have another chapter coming up soon, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for joining us for Sports in the 607. We'll have another segment coming soon.